Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Hey, I've got a very interesting, cool take on construction and construction technology that you may not have considered before. We're going to be talking about the use of technology. We're going to be talking about BIM. We're going to be talking about drones. We're going to be talking about laser scanning. We're going to talk about reality capture. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. And you might think, well, I don't really like tech. Listen to this interview because our guest today is Matthew Byrd. Matt, he's a great guy. You're really going to like it. He makes it all very approachable and easy to understand. And I want you to listen because I just know we're going to uncover something you haven't thought about before. And that one thing might be the new key for you to focus on the rest of this year or the next couple of years. So stay tuned with Matt Byrd and let's get to the episode. Matthew Byrd, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I have envy of your background.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Hey, I like yours. The guy back there looks familiar.
The guy back there, yeah.
I see a hard hat. I mean, it's very familiar.
It's very construction-y.
Yes.
And yours is very tech-y construction-y, which lends itself to our topic today.
It does.
Because you're a drone expert.
Well, I would say drone is a piece of it. The overall, I would step back and say construction technology is kind of something we focus on. So,
all right.
Which really covers a few different tools. Yes.
Yeah, cool tools. Well, listen, before we get into that, Matt Byrd, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these construction professional business owners all around the world?
That's a great question. Well, thanks for asking, and happy to give you a little background. So, I actually got started in surveying. My dad is a licensed land surveyor, and that's how I got into kind of the geospatial world, working in construction. And I'll be honest, when I first got started, I wasn't in love with surveying.
Oh,
I was working on a field crew, going out in the field, working in the dirt, setting points with GPS, and I was young at the time, and being younger, I was also into technology, and I also kind of liked video games at the time.
Yeah.
And now at some point about 12 years ago, those paths kind of crossed when we started learning about construction technology. And specifically, one of the tools that kind of opened this door was called 3D laser scanning. And it is a piece of equipment that sits on a tripod.
Yeah.
And it spins around with a laser and measures the existing conditions of whatever environment you're using that scanner in. So instead of going out and setting individual points and taking tape measure shots and using photographs, this scanner lets us digitize and create a digital replica of whatever job site we were working on and bring it back to the office. And we basically are creating this digital environment that looks real. You can measure anything virtually. So it started kind of crossing my interests in technology and gaming environments and things like that with the real world, with construction and with my career. And that led to learning about additional tools like using drones and photogrammetry to map overall areas and do inspections. And we found that when we started using these tools, it started taking us into different project types that we'd never really even done surveying in.
Like what? Give me some examples.
So, when we first were surveying, we were doing oil and gas facilities. We weren't really working in buildings at the time.
Oh, you were doing the pipelines, you mean, or the doghouse?
We were doing pipelines and processing facilities that are full of tanks and, pipes and, things like that. We weren't in architectural work. We weren't really doing architectural surveys or building surveys. However, as soon as we started doing laser scanning and seeing the different applications of that tool, we started having architects say, hey, could you actually come use that on our building and scan the inside of here and give us a floor plan? Because we're doing a renovation. And normally we walk through with a tape measure and measure every single room and every door and every window. And this laser scanner maps all of that by itself. And so we started seeing, okay, we're doing this in facilities. We're getting asked by architects to do this. Then we started even getting weird requests like forensic projects. Hey, there was
like crime scenes?
Both. Yeah. There's crime scene, there's car accident, there's construction defect projects. And what it really started showing was okay, these new technologies, a lot of people don't know they exist. However, we're starting to see that everybody across any type of construction project has a reason to use them. And that usually it's for the same reason. It's the fact that if you're doing a renovation, you're doing an expansion, you're going to build on an existing building or an existing site. What's the first thing you need? You need
Plans.
existing information and measurements of what exists there first. So then you can start designing a renovation. Well, all of those industries have the same problem. They don't have existing information that's accurate.
Right.
Most of their existing documents are outdated.
Imagine that I want to bring this back to time.
Yes.
Just plain old time. Because, all of us understand doing an estimate based on time. So I'll let you tell me a standard application, something super vanilla. How long would it take me to walk and measure it with a tape measure? And maybe percentage wise, this will be easier. Percentage wise, how much faster is it to do it with setting up your laser points and scanning the room?
Yeah. I would say that it's on average, probably a 50% savings doing in time and maybe even in cost. And I think it depends. It maybe changes based on the scale of the job. If you're running out to measure a single room or a window, you don't need to laser scan that, right? Because you can run out and pull a tape measure and you're good. But if you're trying to do 5,000 square feet of a house, or if it's even a really complex dimension, like one of the things we've seen on even smaller jobs, like a residential build, is sometimes there's unique shapes. There's a curved wall that someone's trying to design a rail along, or a countertop, or a cabinetry, or something. When there's unique shapes, how are you measuring that very well with a tape measure and coming back to draw it up and design what you're going to build to put there well?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about heritage homes in that, like a heritage home or a super artsy building, like a museum or something.
Yes.
It's going to have architectural features to it.
Yep. And the scanner, you set it up right in front of that wall and scan, it's measuring at 1 million measurements per second. It's spinning and measuring and mapping every angle on that wall, every little dot. I mean, you get the light switch, the outlet locations, all of it. And so you don't have to wonder if you're measuring it properly and draft it and then go back to the office and try to draw it up in CAD and get your dimensions. You run that scan, you take it back, and you have this 3-dimensional data in your CAD program. So it's a cost savings and a time savings in both the field and the office. And that scales even more on larger jobs. Yeah.
There's an interesting application. Tell me if I'm wrong, but you've got a project manager and let's say the owner, they've gone and they've estimated the site, they've done, but then you've got a lead, we'll just call them a foreman or a crew lead, who now has to go to the site and start the job, but they've never seen it before. They show up Monday. It's their first time seeing it. And so that takes a little bit of getting used to. Obviously, you do your safety and your job site setup. But how much would that, I'm curious, how much would that save them saying, hey, George, this is the job site you're going to Monday. Here's a quick video not a video run through, but here's the actual site you're going to. And now I can look at it and see the.
Yeah. Huge benefit. In fact, sometimes we've found that use case, the client got more value out of that even than they did the product. Even though the product was valuable, the collaboration tools and the planning and the project management, when you do a laser scan, the laser scanner also can take a panoramic image. And so when you go through whatever it is, let's just use a house as example. If we take our laser scanner and we spend an hour and we go do a bunch of scans throughout the house, our delivery is a full point cloud of this house that has every room, every wall, every window, and it has panoramic images from every spot we set up our scanner. So, which is basically like a private street view. You could sit there and walk through and you can give access to the owner, to the subcontractors. This became a big interest during COVID because a lot of people couldn't travel to job sites. You send one guy or you use a local contractor who has a scanner and you say, hey, we've got a house over here that needs scanning, or we've got a commercial building that needs scanning. Well, now, as soon as that scan is done, your whole team or anybody you want to give access to can virtually walk through and not just look at pictures, but because it was scanned, they can measure. So they can come up with their estimates of how much material or how long this is going to take with never having to go to the job site.
So if this sounds incredibly cool for, 10 reasons I can think of off the top of my head. Imagine putting this in a mechanical room. So now you're in a, multifamily building and you've got a mechanical room. If I'm in the mechanical room, can I actually see, like, how much detail can I see on the conduit connections, for instance? Am I
All of
seeing
it.
it all in black and white, or is it,
So most scanners in today's age have the ability to be black and white or color. It will take the image from the same spot that it does the scan, and it will apply the color from the image to the point cloud data. So your point cloud, when you're navigating it on in your 3D design software, it's like the real data. You can see a yellow pipe, a green pipe. You can get in the image and read the label of if it was water or fire.
Right.
It's a lot of information. And I would say on that note, the more complex, the more valuable it becomes. It's more frequent that people ask for this type of service in a mechanical room, in a heating plant, in a facility. However, even in the last few years, the technology is becoming cheaper and faster and easier to use. So it's creating the adoption in a wider spread use case now.
Yeah, I guess this is why this falls under BIM generally, right? Actually, let's take a second, because a lot of people don't know what BIM is. Depending on the trade, there's so many trades and so many specialties. Can I just put the test question? Matt, what is BIM?
What is BIM? I will say that's a big question, and there's a million different answers.
Well, just do a short one, because we want to get to the drone stuff. The drone's even cooler. You just took me down a cool path here, but what's BIM?
So BIM is building information modeling. And typically when you hear BIM, the idea is that the design on the project is being done in 3D. And the benefit of being able to design in 3D with the architect and the mechanical engineer and the HVAC is you all are designing in one platform. And so when you take the architectural model and the HVAC, you can put that design together and you can run coordination and clash detection to see if your design has issues prior to it being built in the field. And you can do the coordination before it's ever built and say, hey, this design's not going to work right here. We're going to have to move this up and move this over. You're working through a lot of issues prior to construction ever happening. Right. But the design has to be in 3D for that to happen. And again, this is one of the reasons the scan happens often, is because if there's an existing drawing right now of a building that's going to be renovated that they want to do the BIM process on, it's in 2D. And it's outdated. And so you start with scanning it and creating an as-built BIM to then start your design from.
So you have good data to start with.
Yep.
Which allows you all sorts of things, I suppose. First, you can estimate a lot tighter. There's not as much guesswork. And then when you're doing your drafting, where, like you said, there's going to be clashes where electrical is going to, interrupt some mechanical pass through or something like that. I imagine all the cutting and coring guys aren't going to be as happy, because they're like,
there's a lot of, and a lot of people talk about that, about new technology too, right? Of like, oh, this is going to replace jobs, or it's going to make going to take away the budget of going out with a tape measure, and we really try to preach on, look, these technologies are here. People are using them. They are removing a lot of headache. They're making projects faster. They're making them cheaper. It really doesn't take the job away. It just shifts what it is that you focus on. Maybe you're not going out with the tape measure anymore, but you get to spend your time in the office being more innovative and getting projects done faster, making the client happier and winning more work, removing some of those issues.
That's what the whole show's about, Matt.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Well, that was a heck of an intro.
Oh man, that's a long one. Yeah, sorry about that.
No. I mean, we're in the conversation now. So one of the things that made us go and seek you was drones and the use of drones and the application and how it's changed. I mean, for some people, they're a nuisance. For some people, they're a toy. But let's talk about how people are using these in construction, both residential and commercial. And when I say commercial, I mean civil, institutional, like you did oil pipeline stuff. I'm sure you guys could do stuff with the facades of high-rise towers, all of that stuff. But why don't I let you talk about what's the application of using drones now in construction?
Yeah, well, kind of similar to scanning, really, there's multiple. And And that's one of the fun things about all these tools is there are a lot of applications for them. So one of the very first things that comes to mind is rooftops. There's a lot of projects where there's an existing building and owners are wanting to put solar on the roof. And again, this is one of those scenarios of, well, in order to design solar and installation and where things are going to go and where cables are running, you got to have existing maps of the roof.
Right.
Nobody has existing accurate drawings of the rooftop. And so the drone can be used with different types of payloads on them, whether it's a camera or there's actual lidar sensors that are similar to the laser scanning process where the drone is flying and laser scanning using lidar at the same time, mapping whatever it's flying by.
So you can see gutters, downspouts, you can see
all of
vents, everything.
Yep.
What about heat loss or moisture entry?
That's another use case, which would be a different sensor. You can swap out and put a thermal camera. And so you can actually do inspections and or mapping with thermal imagery to be able to do that.
So I have one investment property, and it's a small apartment building, but it's really tall. And the guy showed up to do an estimate, and he had a 25-foot ladder on his truck.
There you go.
And he's like, well, I'll just look from down here and make some best case estimates. And I kind of did a thing on Google Earth already. And I wonder how many times roofers are going out and doing that, or, window guys, siding guys, soffit guys, gutter guys, there's a bunch of different applications. But I suppose now with a drone, you don't have to worry about the weather. You don't have to worry about, you don't want it to be too windy or you lose a drone, but
correct.
You know what I mean? Like you can now extend your options and have better data. Am I right?
Absolutely. And that even is a big safety increase. There's a lot of guys that climb ladders and use lifts and do other things to be able to see up at elevated areas where now you stand at the ground and you fly the drone up to do the inspection. In fact, this brings up you mentioning the guy bringing out the ladder. It did remind me of a project locally that an architect came to us and said, hey, we've got this really complex job and we see what you're doing because we saw you on LinkedIn and you were sharing some information about a project. And it got us thinking that maybe this is an application for a job that we have coming up. It's a large historic school building and the sides are very complex. There's a ton of windows. It's 3 stories tall. And normally we would be taking a lift and going along the facade up and down and taking pictures and measuring windows. And it would take us 3 weeks to do this.
Just to capture baseline data.
Just to capture the field data.
Right.
And they said, we see that you've got these scanners and these drones. Is that something you could apply on this project? And we said, absolutely. We can go around the base of the building doing the laser scan from the ground. And then we can take the drone and point the camera at the side of the facade and fly across and take a series of pictures. So you have up close imagery of every face of this facade without ever having to get on a lift. And that cut the time down to 1 week from what would have been 3 or 4 weeks with multiple people renting lifts, So we see applications like that where it's like there's elevated areas, there's inspections that have to be done, there's manual measurements, and this technology, it ends up being faster, cheaper, and more accurate. And better innovative deliverables for the end client too. We get a whole 3D model of the school building now instead of a folder with 5,000 images,
Yeah, that's a nightmare. Even a nightmare for the intern student.
Yes.
I keep coming back to the application you're talking about, which is a bit more on the residential side. I apologize, but using, I think you said the thermal tool to look at a roof or to look at windows to see where there's heat loss or moisture. Imagine the application now that I'm doing an estimate for a customer and my competitor's not.
Yeah.
Right. The customer says, well, we think we need to replace these 3 windows, or we think we've got a leak in the roof here. And so you go, okay, got a leak in the roof there. We're going to fix that leak. Whereas now if my company shows up and we do, some complex scan, you can go to the homeowner or the property owner and say, well, you're right. Those 3 windows need help. But we also noticed boom, 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 and boom. Now, I'm going to go business coach on you for a second. The way to get better than industry average gross profit margin is you have to be different than your customer. Then I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
your competitor. Jeez,
Yeah.
did I say customer?
You
You
did, but
have to
that's
be
okay.
you have to be very different than your competitors in order to get better than industry average gross profit margin.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this sounds to me like one of those keys to getting better gross margin, because again, if you're a roofing guy and you show all of these digitally stitched together pictures versus the other guy, you're going to get more, bigger, more
Yeah.
complex jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that, our initial use for it as like a service provider, we help implement these tools for clients. Our initial use is the accuracy of the data and the measurement, but we've absolutely seen clients come and say, "Hey, we've got a bid on this job and we want it to look better than our competitor. We want to create a presentation that we're submitting that
Right,
show."
right.
So they'll go out and do this work just for that visual data and being able to show the client a 3D model of their building and say, this is what we plan to do with it. Here's
The
an
wow factor.
animation of the design. Yeah. This technology creates such a wow factor with the visual data that it creates. And then you have the data to actually use on the job too.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed at the things that that property owners will do to their properties. And if you're just doing one type of trade, you might think that everybody does it, and it's all this kind of vanilla world. But I no two building renovators are the same. No two remodeling guys are the same. There's a guy in California I work with. He only renovates homes that are $10 million brand new.
Yep.
10 million and up.
Yep.
And his renovations are $800,000. These people don't worry about money at all. They're taking brand new, never lived in homes and renovating before they move in.
Yeah.
And then you've got other guys that just focus on bathrooms in, the area of town they live in. So I'm amazed at the scope that gets put at construction and what people are able to do with the tools they've got. But now as the tools improve, our capacity improves too.
Absolutely. And I think there's applications, some of my focus is really these measuring tools and the drones and the scanners, but there's a lot of other technologies that we focus on and talk about and are trying to bring awareness around too. A lot of those companies, even the bathroom guys, for example, if all they do is bathroom renovations, right now they may go into a homeowner or a client or somebody that's looking to renovate the bathroom and have a catalog that they're like looking at pictures of examples, right? Well, that's not what the future is going to be like. The future is going to be, okay, I'm going to bring my iPad or my virtual reality goggles into your home and put them on you. And with AR or VR, I'll show you the options and you can actually look at it in your home.
Yeah.
And walk in there and change the color and like really in a real world environment or in an immersive environment in a virtual reality one, we'll have the model of your bathroom in here. So you can click the buttons and say, show me blue on the floor, show me stone walls, and it's going to change the price because that information's built in. These digital tools have an application for everybody. And it's even going to retail shoppers. I mean, Amazon and those guys are getting to the point they're building 3D models of their clothes so that you could take your phone and say, I want to see what this looks like on me. And you see it, so you see an example, or I want to see what this couch looks like and how it fits in my living room. So these tools are something that I think everybody should be paying attention to because they're still in the early stage. And I think if you get into it now, you're going to be an early adopter in some sense, but in 5 years, I think it's going to be the normal. And so the people that understand and get into it and keep an eye on it now, they'll get to ride that wave as this becomes the normal.
There's so many angles to go in this conversation. What's the part about construction technology that I haven't asked about? What's my blind spot here?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think that the idea of digitizing job sites and creating immersive environments and creating a better way of doing things, really that's what I think it comes down to, is just a lot of companies, and even in construction, we default to the old way of doing things, right? Like, why consider this? The tape measure has always worked. Yeah. And I think I just try to push the idea of more companies being willing to think outside the box and consider new technologies and new processes in a way to help them do more work, do better work, reduce waste, and it ends up helping them in their business and it helps the end client.
Yeah. And again, when you're different than your competitors, you can charge more and you can be more profitable. And, we've had other builders on here, GCs, who are saying, look, I took build time. I'm going to get this almost wrong. We had a gentleman named Anthony Amuna Tegui on here. I think it was episode 156. And he took his build time on restaurants, like he'd do a standalone McDonald's type thing, from 14 weeks down to 6 weeks. Well, that's massive. And a company like McDonald's is very happy with that kind of thing. And so what do? They hire him again and again and again and again. But he was thinking about that efficiency all the way down to, in certain instances, painting the ductwork before it was installed so that the painters save time. Just now they have to do touch-ups and stuff, but it's not a full repaint and a full shutdown of the restaurant. Everything lends itself to that. We've got a gentleman that I work with, a family business up in Canada, and they are right now, they're kitchen and bathroom modelers, and they're really good at it. And they're looking at their process saying, actually, their theme for 2023 is the need for speed.
There you go.
And so they're saying, look, we already do great work, but how can we do great work faster? So I wonder where technology fits for all these different applications.
I honestly think that there are tools and there are technologies that exist that most companies have not implemented yet that absolutely help with the speed and the quality and the efficiency.
So where do you get started? Tell me what's step one? Is it the laser scanner?
I think that step one if you're a business that's not yet doing any of this, you're not doing any construction technology, laser scanning, digitizing, I would say laser scanning is step one. It is, there are cheap scanners. Most people don't even know this. The easiest, cheapest way to even just see what it's like
is your iPhone.
The newer iPhones have a lidar sensor in them.
Oh man, of course they do.
You can download a 3D scan app and you can open it up and start scanning, and you can map your room, and it'll take 30 seconds and you'll see a visual on your phone there, and you can spin it around. You can measure it. You can email it to yourself. Most people don't even know that exists.
Well, they do now.
Now, this is where, when you start getting into laser scanners and the hardware and the process, is how accurate is that? And how accurate are you looking for? You wouldn't use the iPhone lidar to map an entire house and use it to fabricate accurate panels that need to be, installed. It's not a super accurate device,
right?
But it's something that gets you to at least start seeing how it works. The next level thing might be like a Matterport or a Leica BLK scanner, or that's what I would look into first, because a lot of companies need to go out and measure existing conditions, no matter what trade, whether a bathroom, a countertop, or an entire house, or an entire airport.
Or anybody in MEP, right? That get that mechanical room, go get the...
Absolutely.
There's so many applications.
Absolutely.
The other thing that comes to...
I was going to say one more thing, is that this is still very early. There's a lot of need for scanning of properties and projects, even apart from the trade. It's something that people could consider. Hey, if nobody in my area or nobody in the projects that I'm interacting with is already doing this, maybe that's something I can add on to my business as an offer. You mentioned McDonald's, a guy that's doing these McDonald's.
Right.
A couple years ago, I saw an RFP for 4,000 McDonald's locations to have this type of work done.
Crazy. Oh, so you're talking about, this could be another sub-trade angle.
Yes. Or an add-on for an architect, and there's, obviously a business decision there of like, do we bring this in-house, or do we outsource it, or do we rent a scanner? That's a whole thing to look into and consider, but I at least throw it out there as an option, because I see the volume of need of this growing. And I think in the next few years, there's really going to be a very high demand for it and a lack of personnel really doing it.
So lack of personnel is actually where you saw me taking notes there. And this is kind of the path you took. I wonder how many people listening right now, because everybody listening here is the owner of a construction or trades contracting company, right? Most of us, or many of us, have kids. And our kids might be saying, I don't want to do what dad does. I don't want to be in HVAC. I'll just use HVAC as an, or I don't want to be in roofing, whatever. Well, this might be an opportunity for you to go to your kid who is really good at video games and say, hey, I got an idea. Hear me out for a second. And maybe that's the way to enter somebody else, your daughter, your son, your niece, your nephew, somebody else in your family a way to nurture them into the company, maybe reinvent the company in the future. That's another,
Absolutely.
like you said, it's another conversation.
Yep.
But what a great way to engage somebody who says, well, I don't want to follow mom or dad in the business because I don't want to swing a hammer.
It really is. And, I'm young. I got into this when I was in my 20s. I started my own business at 24 and I've grown it to a 7-figure company. That's how much need is that. I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree in this. A lot of this right now is hands-on learning. You're not going to college and coming out with a degree in laser scanning and construction technology. There's some programs out there. Right. But when I get family, I get friends, I get other people that are like, we see what you're doing. Like we have this, high schooler that doesn't really know what they want to do when they get out of high school and they're considering going to college, but not sure why. And I always say there is need in the construction technology world that is laser scanning and drones and virtual reality and augmented reality
options.
The career opportunities are massive because there's a lack of staff. Big construction firms are starting to hire for these types of roles, laser scanning, BIM, digital technologies. And you can, in a few years of hands-on experience by getting an internship or like you're saying, kind of get started, there's a big career opportunity that you can be making more doing some of these than you would have if you went to school and became something else. It's a great opportunity for youth in jumping into this because it's going to be needed over the next several years.
Let's put the challenge, let's call it a challenge. The challenge out there, somebody listening, we just resonated with something you're thinking, go and ask that person, let's say your son, say your daughter, to listen to this episode. I mean, that's a low friction way to get into the conversation. Just say, listen to this episode. Tell me what you think. And, they're going to say yes. They're going to say no. Either way, it kind of doesn't matter. You've started the conversation. If they say yes, you go down that path. If they say no, the conversation's on the table and you've done what you're supposed to as a parent. You've tried your best. Continue to try your best. But if that's the part that you and I played today, I think that's pretty cool to open up that conversation in a company somewhere in the world. You and I may never meet them.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Although it'd be nice if they sent us a note back and said, I talked to my son about it and he said, no way. And he's going to be an e-gamer and he's going to make his millions at whatever it is. But I'd love to hear from anybody who, and hear what the feedback was from their son, daughter, niece, nephew.
Yeah, I agree. And that's really what I'm trying to do is advocate and just talk about these technologies, inspire next generation, help companies transform and adopt some of these tools. And again, you even talk about maybe your kids are into gaming and they don't know what they want to do for work yet. It's a direct entry. I mean, the construction industry is starting to use gaming engines to take digital models for simulations. I mean, I'll give you an example. We actually host an annual conference that focuses on these tools and technologies. One of our keynote speakers this last year was ExxonMobil, and they talked about their vision for an industrial metaverse and building digital twins of their oil and gas facilities. That requires mapping them. It requires creating a 3D model, bringing them into a gaming environment so that they can have people walk through and do training. I
see. So it's not right. It's not some mythical land. It's actually what it looks like at the oil patch.
Yes.
Right down the middle of Nebraska and all the way up to northern Canada.
Exactly.
Or Kyrgyzstan, wherever it is.
Because can you imagine one of these asset owners that owns all these buildings, whether it was McDonald's or ExxonMobil or an airport or anywhere, at any time being able to open up a digital replica of what exists of their facility for planning and maintenance and operations. And so the gaming and the digitization and all of this is going to be across all of those industries in the next several years.
We just went from bathroom renovators to people that property manage airports to oil field services all across the world. That's pretty cool.
And but it comes down to the same, whether you're doing a counter or a bathroom or a whole building, these tools apply. You can scan the counter so you have accurate fabrication. You can scan the whole house so you have accurate floor plans. They are very scalable and there's different tools for different use cases.
A couple times you've mentioned some other things. You said you have a conference. You actually have your own podcast as well. Why don't we learn more about you on the professional side? So how do we find you in this big wide world? What's that conference you mentioned? What's your podcast? All those things.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I started a podcast because using this for 10 years, I was like, man, there's not a lot of information out there about this. And I found that as I talk to an architect or I talk to an engineer or a construction company, trying to grow my own business, I was like, hey, are you guys using scanners yet or laser scanning? And they're like, what's
What?
laser scanning? I have no idea. And then over time, I started following big marketing guys like Gary Vaynerchuk and Lewis Howes and podcasts and and that's what inspired me to go, okay, I think that we need to start having a podcast to talk about these tools, talk about the technologies, and start sharing it out to the general public. And so the place I spend the most time is LinkedIn. That's my second home. I'm on LinkedIn all day, on and off, answering questions, posting content, trying to educate. It's been a very powerful tool in helping me build my business, honestly. So I'm on there a lot. Happy to connect there, share content.
Give us the spelling of your name, because it's your last name, Byrd.
Yes.
It's not spelled the way some people might think. So it's Matthew Byrd. How do you spell it? Matthew
Byrd, Matthew, and Byrd is Byrd.
Yeah, they might get another guy typing in like
Byrd. It's very possible. Very possible. So Matthew Byrd, and the name of our podcast is Reality Capture Network. And that's also the name of our conference. So it's kind of everything wrapped under one name, realitycapturenetwork.com. And so that's kind of the evolution of what happened is started the podcast, started conversations and educating, content on social. And I built a pretty large community. I've got about 30,000 or so on LinkedIn. And we decided, you know what? Let's pull together our own conference and bring together the drone companies and the laser scanning companies and the construction companies. And so 2 years ago, we put on our conference for the first time, and now we've turned it into an annual event. This year, it is in October, and we're actually holding it at Boise State University.
That's right, because you're in Idaho.
I'm in Idaho. I'm in Boise. Yep.
Yeah. Do you get out and fish at all?
I do. That is one of my when I need to unplug from all these technologies, I turn the phone off and I'll go stand in the river.
So you're a fly fisherman?
I like fly, but I also like reeling. I like a little bit of both.
I like fishing. I'm horrible at it.
I know.
Just like it.
I do too. I don't always catch. You fish. You don't catch sometimes. Yeah.
I like to think that that I know how to fish. Actually, I'm and I know people have heard this on the show before, but I'm going fly fishing in a couple of weeks. To a pretty cool location. There, we're going for bonefish. Wow! Saltwater fly fishing, but in Hawaii, like in Molokai.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, there's me and 3 buddies. Every year we go to a different place. So this year it's my turn to pick. Next year it'll be another guy. Next year another guy. So,
that's cool.
Yeah. So the fishing, I know the fishing out where you are. By the way, Boise is one of the most beautiful cities ever.
It really is so nice, and we moved here actually 5 years ago from California. And when we started, telling people we moved here and then we held the conference here, everyone's like, Boise? Why Boise? What?
Yeah.
But everybody who came out to the event for never being to Boise, now the answer is, oh my gosh, we're definitely coming back. Boise was so fun. We went on a hike. The views were cool. The downtown beautiful city. Beautiful. It really is kind of a hidden gem.
Yeah. I love that whole area.
Yeah. Well, if you make it down, we'll have to
go fishing
or go fly fishing, something.
Yeah. Anyways, you've got the conference, you've got the Reality Capture Network podcast, and then we know how to find you on LinkedIn. So it's so good. And I appreciate you coming here and sharing this, because we've covered the entire scope of construction. I think
a little bit.
We might have missed something.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like as much as we dug into, we scratched the surface of what's possible with pushing innovation and new technologies and what we're going to see happen over the next several years. And even the time that we stopped and talked about inspiring young people into this industry and this role, that's something else I strongly believe in, because again, when I started my business, I had no degree, I had no business experience, and I've seen the need for what we're doing. And so I'm interested in inspiring more people to, when they have that interest or they see that vision of something they want to do, not being afraid to take that step. And of course, find people that can advise you or be mentors or connect. You do business consulting, I believe.
Yeah.
There are definitely things to consider. But when we look at these new technologies and the direction that things are going, it creates a lot of opportunity.
Okay. So now remember earlier, I said, send this episode to your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, everybody listening, who needs to hear this. Have them listen, because this is completely new. And then of course your podcast as well, the Reality Capture Network. Matt, thank you. Great episode. I appreciate it. We'll have to have you back again.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming on, having me come on and share a little bit of knowledge, and always happy to answer questions. What I post all the time when I put something out on social media, I say, and I'm very honest with this, is that one, I believe in collaboration over competition. If you're unfamiliar with this technology and these tools, find somebody who knows, ask questions, like collaborate on something so you can get started. And the other thing I always say, I honestly just want to see more people win. I want to see people win and benefit. The
go-giver mentality, the go-giver approach. Yeah. We all help when we help each other. I know it sounds corny, but it's true.
It's I really do believe in it. And what's the saying? It's like all ships rise with the tide, right?
Yeah.
If we can integrate these and help the industry, everybody ends up benefiting.
Love it. Matt, thank you. Very inspiring and educational. You get an A today.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was shooting for an A. Well, thank you again for having me. Man. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. We covered a lot of ground there. And I know we covered a lot of the technical stuff, but I think the most impactful part to me was thinking about a business owner who's trying to get one of their kids involved in the business. And maybe, just maybe, this episode is the thing that shows them an opportunity where technology can be brought into the family construction company. That would be fantastic. And again, I'm really honest about this. If that happens, if you're able to have that conversation, shoot me a note. Let me know how that went. I'd like to hear just the feedback anyways. How did that conversation go? Did you have that conversation? What kind of response did you get? What were they interested in? Is this a great way for them to use their experience with technology and, playing with computers, maybe loving computers and tech? How did that conversation happen at your kitchen table, and what came of it? Love to hear from you. You can always text me. You guys know my cell phone number. It's 604-837-8361. Just shoot me a text message there. Anyways, listen, the next piece of the episode is questions and answers with Dom. If you've got questions you want me to answer live here on the podcast, just go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. There's a big red button that shows up on the screen. You just hit that button. That's the record button. And then just record your question there. And then I'll answer it here live on the show. And I'd love to hear from you so that we can answer that. Digitize the job site. Think about the implications. Think about the applications. Think about what I had mentioned here is that if you want better than industry average gross profit margin, by the way, that means more money in the front pocket of your jeans. If you want to make stupid money, let's call it that, stupid money, you need to be really, really different than your competition. Really different. So if you're a roofer, if you do windows or siding, we talked a lot about renovators today. How are you going to get better than industry average numbers by being just like everybody else? Well, you're not. But if you could find ways to be unique, either in your service delivery, your service options, the amount of deals you win, the margin you win those deals, and the technology you use to get there, that's how you get there. Obviously, as a business coach, I live and breathe this stuff, and you can see I get pretty excited about it. But think about how you're going to apply what you learned here today.